Hello, everyone. I'm excited today to bring you Chris Brown. He is the VP of Franchise Development at Close Bin, which is a very unique asset based franchise. So, we're going to dive into kind of the business model and everything about it today. So, welcome to the show, Chris.
Thanks, Brian. Great to be here. Appreciate it.
Awesome. So what is Close Bin and what makes it unique?
You know, Clothesbin is a recycling brand. We receive recycled clothes. We consider ourselves to be more of a tech brand than we do a recycling brand, but just because of the technology that's involved with it. It's probably one of the key points that make this a true semi-absentee, almost absentee type of model. Each of the bins that we place in a market area, they have a device within them that communicates with an app.
Okay.
We are still a green company though, and we do lean into that. We give back. Big component of this is our relationship with schools. I'll talk about that in a second too, though.
Awesome. And so, what we're talking about, so everyone understands, is the side of the, in shopping centers and schools are these collection devices, right? That people can drop off their used
Yep.
clothes. I think a lot of people see those and they think that they're charities, right? And that they're going to a charity. Obviously, this is a for-profit business. So can you talk a little bit about that in terms of kind of, I guess, the industry from a whole, from this collection standpoint?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? Some of them are charities. Some of them are the ones and twos and the threes that we see out there. Everyone has a relationship with bins. Everyone knows what they are. They can see them. A lot of times they're in the back corner by the dumpsters and they're overflowing and they're gross and
Yeah.
what have you.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're a professional organization where we have a system. We place bins in areas that are much different than the ones that maybe the ones that people who aren't in our markets where we have bins are accustomed to seeing. So the bins themselves, from our standpoint, the model, the bins are placed in a market area. All of our franchisees have a dedicated market territory. It's gigantic. It's 10 to 15 zip codes in general. It's really predicated or based on the number of convenience stores or gas stations, and it's an interesting sort of measuring stick to use, but convenience is the number one factor why people
Mm.
place clothes in the areas that they do. Now, the segment itself, most of the clothes, and you talked about this briefly just a second ago. Most of the clothes go to the landfill.
Mm.
That's the truth. Those that don't, the nonprofit organizations as a whole, sort of the term itself, whether it's Goodwill or Salvation Army or maybe even like a Veterans Association, things that have causes. Most of those are bins that are placed randomly, arbitrarily, sometimes in front of the store if it's a storefront themselves. They don't always take everything. They'll take some clothes, they won't take others. They want them hung on a hanger. They have different requirements. We take everything. We take all clothes. Typically, people who donate clothes in our bins, they're usually in bags, like small
Yep.
recyclable grocery bags, 10 pounds, 12 pounds each. So the segment is sort of separated by the nonprofits that we're talking about, and then the rest of the industry. The nonprofits, they make up about 15% of the segment. And then the other 85%, that's where we sort of focus our market share or where we want to draw from. We do, because of that convenience factor, we do get some of the Goodwill Salvation Army crowd, donations, the tax write-offs, they're not there anymore like they used to
Yep.
be. And so now it's just a matter of, where am I going to, how much longer is the bag of clothes going to stay in the back of my trunk or the back of my car before I put it in, donate it. That's typically what
Yeah.
happens.
Okay. So awesome. So let's talk about from a franchisee's perspective. You mentioned they get a large territory, 10 to 15 or 10 to 12 zip codes, and then they buy a package of bins, right, to start. So how many bins do they start with?
Well, we would like everyone to start with 20. I mean, not everyone wants to sort of slow crawl it, but we found, and we've been doing this for 7, 8 years as a franchise brand. We found that people grow best when they establish that foundation. So we'll start with 20. We help our franchisees find locations for those 20 bins. They help us too. A lot of them have relationships and connections and ideas, more than they think they do initially. And so we take them through a coaching system. We identify different areas, different relationships, whether it's with a PTA or whether it's with a local organization. We'll place bins at churches and community centers and places like that. And quite honestly, most people have those kinds of connections. We do too. We have a number of different filters and systems that we run through our process to find locations to connect with people like administrators and principals of schools. I talked a little bit about the school program. That's a big part of our system. We give back. We partner with schools. We're in 700 schools right now. We'll be in over 1,000 by the end of the year. We have a lot of not only momentum, because there is a lot of word of mouth that sort of breathes into that.
Mm,
Principals talk with other principals, administrators talk with other administrators, and usually what happens is a franchisee will go into a market and they'll have 15 or 20 schools, and then all of a sudden they've got 15 or 20 other schools that are contacting them to, hey, we want a bin placed on our area. They're always looking for fundraising opportunities, and this is really one, as semi-absentee as it is for the franchisee, it is completely passive for the school. All they do is give us permission to place the bin on the property, and we do that.
and then so obviously the school's getting a percentage probably of that revenue, I'd imagine. So how much can a school generate, or what like how much is it meaningful? I guess is the main
Yeah,
thing.
right. Yeah. So I grew up in a household of educators. Both my parents were teachers, and every school is scrapping for ways in which they can just, even if it's to offer an incentive to a teacher, even if it's to give a gift card to a kid for winning a spelling bee, things like that that aren't necessarily a part of a school's budget. So we can, it's a variable number. We end up giving schools a percentage of what we take in at the bin that's on that
Yep.
property. It's usually about 12 to 15% roughly. It could be, it could be a couple $100s. It could be a couple $1,000s. It just depends on how much is collected at that location, which they have a part in. A
Yep.
lot of the schools will reach out to the parents and families of the schools, the students that are a part of the school, and just say, hey, look, if you're going to donate clothes, donate them here. We get a percentage of it, and
Mm,
it's a healthy percentage. We love doing that. It's a part of our DNA. It's a part of that giving back feeling that we have, and we're not
okay.
only are we a green company trying to help the planet, we're also trying to help the people on it. So
So of all the bins placed currently, you said you have about 700. What percentage of that is like of total bins? Is it more than half of where these things are located?
it's a probably percentage wise, maybe about half,
Okay.
maybe venturing on the north side of that,
Okay.
55 to 60%, that kind of thing. We'll place bins in market areas. Ideally, schools are the relationship
Yep.
where we want to be. But we place bins at gas stations, convenience stores, retail centers too. That's just as equally valuable. It's just we're not able to communicate directly with the
Yeah.
quote
Yeah. Yeah.
unquote customer base. So.
Yep. Are you paying some of those gas stations and other people also revenue shares?
We do. We give a revenue split with
Pretty
with
much
any of the
everybody. Yep.
people that give us permission.
Okay.
It's a fixed cost with a gas station, a retail
Okay.
center,
Just as
something like that.
a couple
Yeah,
hundred
because we
bucks, whatever.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and it has to be, so that's an important part too. It has to be a little bit more of an exact science too. When we
Yeah.
look at the property to we can tell to a certain degree if it's going to be a busy property, one that's not. We get it right most of the time. If it's not a great property, the franchisee just simply moves the bin. Now that's not something we do, at a moment's notice. We track it over a period of time, and that app that I was talking about earlier, that gives the
Yep.
franchisee the ability to do that. So
Awesome.
can't manage what you can't measure, right?
Yep.
And so we definitely put that in there.
And I think, when I think about this, like this business model, it's comparative to a vending machine business, right? And you hear these
Yeah,
guys talk about on
yeah,
Twitter, like how hard it is to place vending machines, right? Because they already have a vending machine there, and it's like, it's like getting into the placement of it is the biggest challenge. Once you're in, like the
yeah.
servicing of it is easy. So in this business, like, is that also the biggest challenge of finding these spots, or is that not as much of a bigger deal because there's a lot more options?
Uh, I think that it is definitely the key to the
Yep.
success of the business is finding the best location. We're a little bit more nimble than maybe say like a vending machine system. We don't have an inventory. It's the opposite of
Yep.
retail. Retail, you can't sell it if it's not on the shelf. With us, the bin needs to be serviced, and by serviced I mean
Yep.
emptied on a regular basis, kept clean. We have a really strong relationships with the places where we place the bins. That's the secret to it as well. And that's
Yep.
the essence of what we do. But yes, by far and above, the location is the key factor to it.
Yep, and that's something that as a franchisor, you guys help actually place the bins, right? I think I saw in the FDD, you require them to use your placement services for the first group of them. Is that correct?
We so yes, it's a soft require.
Okay.
Some people come to the well,
Highly recommended.
highly recommended. It's
Yeah,
what we call a teaching moment, a coaching
yeah,
environment. An area where we can say, okay, look, this is why we place the bin. Now, a part of their education is, we'll bring the bins to the area, all of them, one big mass, and we'll place the bin on the property and we'll activate that device. And the franchisee does that with us a lot of that time,
yep,
if not all of the time, as a means of us teaching them, why the bin is placed there, how it operates, and it's very
yep,
simple. I think one of the questions is like, okay, what's the maintenance on these things?
yep,
And
yep.
they're galvanized steel, powder coated paint. They're
Tanks, yeah,
going
they're
to be here
tanks.
longer than we will be, right?
Yep,
And so the I guess it's either going to be chip paint or it's going to be total destruction, and it's
yeah.
really not any. There's really not much
What
in the
about
middle there.
so let's get into the technology side of it, and I guess my first question is, or you can explain the technology real quick, and then I have a question on the maintenance side of it.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so the bin itself is it's about 7.5 feet tall, 5 feet wide.
Yep,
It's gigantic. It'll hold about 600 pounds. About two-thirds of that bin is the catch basin for those clothes. There's a roll bar that actually, it provides a number of different safeguards. What goes in the bin, what doesn't. You can't get a TV screen in there or a child's seat or anything like that. But inside that bin is that device, and that device reads the bin itself. And so at all times, the franchisee has the ability to know just how full it is, if it's been serviced. It's serviced by a person that they hire typically. Now, sometimes the franchisee will jump in and do it for a little while so that they can familiarize themselves, know
yep,
what they're holding their employee accountable for or to. But that driver, and I'm calling it a driver, but that driver basically goes around, unlocks that bottom door, and removes those clothes by hand. And the reason or the way they know that that bin's ready to be serviced is that franchisee who is at home with a cup of coffee on a Saturday morning, or they're looking, right after dinner, they're looking at the app on their phone or their laptop, and they're just determining which bins need to be serviced. That's how that driver knows which bins are to be serviced. They get notified by the franchisee. So very simple system, about 2 to 4 hours a week, for the
yep.
franchisee.
So
That's about how much they're
they
dedicated.
monitor the bins. They can see which ones are filled. I think you explained to me earlier that they can put those into a system that optimizes a route, and the guy goes
Yeah.
around in a U-Haul in a Penske truck, something that can hold some weight, right? Collects these and then brings it back to their storage container. Is that
That's right. Yeah,
the model looks like? Okay.
the app has a lot of functionality. It serves as a labor tool also, that franchise,
They
the
can clock in and
employee
clock out.
clock in,
Okay.
clock
Yep.
out. It's a tracking device. We know where they are on the route. Trust but verify. We
Yep.
a lot of times our franchisees will let the drivers know, hey, look, this is a route. Should take you about 3.5 hours. If it's going to take a little bit longer, just let us know. They're paid by the hour. They're usually like a FedEx or a UPS driver who's just wants another shift, wants an extra shift. So they're accustomed to driving around. They just don't have to
I
track
mean,
the
I guess they
packages,
can do it at any time, right? Because it's all
and they can do it
outside. They
anytime.
can do it early
Yeah.
in the morning or at night or
Yeah.
right. So
Yeah.
yeah, I could see that being
Typically.
a good system. So what about the bins have the sensor, right, that determines the weight. Does that ever need to be serviced? Those sensors go bad or calibrating or anything on that?
No, and if there's anything that happens to that sensor, we take care of it as a franchise. That's on us. But the franchisee replaces a battery once every 18 to 24 months. That's it. It's very simple, ease of
Yep.
operation, and it's not something that If I got into a franchise business and I would be responsible for the technology, I'd be in
Yeah,
trouble.
yeah, yeah.
So it's just
Awesome.
that we make it easy for our franchisees.
Yep.
So
All right, so the guy goes around, collects these 600 pound up to 600 pounds per bin,
yeah.
Penske truck brings it back, and then so explain the process. So where do they store the clothes, and then I want to get into how they sell them and actually make money on this thing.
Yeah. So okay. So real quick, the driver will they're notified by the franchisee. They have a route, 10 bins. They're going to
Yep.
service. That's about how many they serve at a time. Service at a time. besides the fact that the truck will only hold about 6 to 7 thousand pounds. That's a limiting factor. But they from a timing standpoint, 6 to 8 hours. That's
Yeah.
about what they're going to service in that during that time. So they go around, they service the first bin, they open the door, they remove the clothes, put them in the box truck. That box
Yep.
truck is the one you get from Penske. And we have a contract, a national agreement with them, so that we make it easy for our franchisees to from a system standpoint, to have all the tools they need to make
Yep.
this work. So the drivers pulling up in that truck, servicing that first bin. Once they've removed all the clothes from that bin, they wipe it down, they close it, they lock it back up, they move on to the next bin. Once they've done that, another 8 or 9 times, they take all of those clothes. Now they have a box truck full of clothes, about 5 to 6 thousand pounds of clothes. The driver then takes those clothes to a temporary storage holding area. It's a 53-foot tractor trailer bed truck, and it's parked usually on a boat or an RV lot. Very simple. We help them find the lot. We help them provide them with the tractor trailer bed itself. But what happens is that those clothes get transferred from that box truck into that
Yep.
tractor trailer bed. That happens that day. The driver gets back in their truck. They go return the truck to the Penske, and then they get in their car and they go home. They do that about 6 or 7 weeks, which is one day at a time. I mean, one day per week. So that's
Yep.
about 6 or 7 times they do that, and then all of a sudden that 53-foot trailer is full. The franchisee contacts someone at our office. We have a coordinator that's in our office that works with a buyer pool of about 30 to 40 buyers throughout the country. We have them positioned so that all of our franchisees, we're in about 22 different states right now. At the end of the year, we'll have 75 territories open. We've got a nice degree of presence in the country right now, which is growing. And that basically what that buyer does is they get in the cab of that 18 wheeler and they drive over, they pick that trailer up, haul it
Yep.
back to their warehouse where they weigh it, and then they pay that franchisee a price per pound. It's about 40,000 pounds. And that range can be anywhere from 50 to 55 cents a pound. That's about what we're getting right now. So it's a substantial sale, typically that takes place once every 6 or 7 weeks.
Okay. And so they send a driver, are the buyer pools generally regional? You said 30 to 40. Are they kind of like the Northeast
They're
here or
all yeah,
Southeast
they're
or,
yeah,
you
they're
know,
all regional, and they're all local. I mean, we have if you looked
so
at
they're not driving
the
from Ohio to Philly or whatever. It's gonna be somebody in the Philly, New Jersey, New York area who would
right,
be a
and that
buyer from
franchise
you.
right, and that
Yep.
franchisee, the only thing that franchisee is doing with those clothes is they're collecting them from the
Yep.
bin into that box truck to the tractor trailer bed, and that's
And
it.
they're done
We
because
don't
you
we
handle
don't
the brokering side of figuring out who's gonna come in and get it,
correct.
from
Yeah,
the franchisor. Okay.
yeah.
And then so then they come, I assume, with an empty tractor trailer. They drop off the empty and they pick up the full one?
Yes, that or they switch it out and they either start with two tractor trailer beds parked side by side. One way or the other, there's a
Yep.
tractor
But so
trailer
it's a
bed there.
constant.
Exactly.
And is it
Yeah.
pretty, is that process pretty quick? Because I imagine if they didn't have 2 and they fill up 1 and you're waiting on somebody to come pick it up, then you're collecting all these clothes and it's like, where are we putting them?
Well, the tractor trailer is going to take about, usually about 6 or 7 weeks to fill with 20
Yep.
bins. Now that's
Yep.
important to say. 20 bins. Our franchisees start with 20 bins. They don't end with 20 bins. So they'll through our period of time, usually that first year, they'll end that first year of their ownership as a franchisee somewhere between like 30 and 50 bins of ownership. Now they're
Okay.
investing in more bins, so that's a different component to the
Yep.
model,
Yep.
scalability and growth at their pace. But sort of back to your question, the franchisee never really has to worry about it. If there are two trailer beds there
Yeah.
that are
Then they're fine. Yeah,
positioned,
then they're totally
they're
fine.
fine. They're
Yep.
never going to have to worry about not having a place to put
Okay,
place the
interesting.
clothes.
And does
Yeah.
that price per pound, you said it was like 50 to 55 cents. Has that number been pretty steady over the years, or has that number been changing with everything that's going on?
There, sometimes it fluctuates, but it usually fluctuates, a couple cents here and there. It's not a, 15 cent, 20 cent drop, something like
Got
that.
it. Okay,
It's
it's a
not,
pretty
it's not like
stable number.
it's not
And
like
so
the stock
then so
market.
then these companies that are buying, 40,000 pounds of random clothes at a time. So what are they
Yeah.
doing? They're bringing them to these warehouses. I assume, much of it's probably going to other countries. Or
Can
what are
be.
they doing there?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it can be. So, they're doing a couple of things, so we don't sort or hang or do anything with the clothes. So they'll do that. They'll sort them. Some of them will sort them. You know, you got a pile of jeans, you got a pile of shoes, you got a pile of handbags or whatever might be
Yep.
in the bin, and then that just gets redistributed to buyers that will then sell those products. Like it's a retail relationship. The wholesale relationship that we have with that buyer, basically, sometimes they'll take that product and repackage it, condense it, repackage it, and then redistribute it and resell it to other wholesale buyers who will then do something else with that. Sometimes it's redistributed in the country, sometimes it gets redistributed, internationally.
Hmm.
But something happens to those clothes. You know, it's going to be shredded T-shirts. It's going to be
Yep.
brand name Fendi, whatever Prada. It's that end of the from one end of the spectrum to the other, and that's the cool thing about it is they know that the buyers know that, and they expect that the shredded the T-shirt that can't be used, stained, whatever. Sometimes gets shredded and repurposed as insulation. The handbags and the things like that
Mm.
they get redistributed to different buyers too.
Yep. Awesome. And one of the things I know you mentioned before, it's like really critical is that the franchisee or the employees, nobody goes through the clothes, right? They don't want them
Right,
going through and picking out all the
right,
good stuff and selling it on eBay because then
right.
it defeats the value, right? They're kind of betting on in that.
You're gonna, our franchisees, anyone who's got a bin, you're gonna see everything from that shredded T-shirt to Air Jordans, and so it's tempting, I know, to look in there and go, oh wow, those are some nice shoes. I'd like to maybe take those and do something with them. But the buyers that buy from us, I mean, they're vetted industry professionals. They've been in this industry for a
Yep.
long time. They know what they're going to see. If they don't see any polo shirts in that lot of clothes that they've collected, they know something's up and they know it's sorted. And that, believe it or not, will drive the price down. Now our buyers aren't sitting at the dock with a clipboard and going,
Yeah.
okay, we're going to give you this price for this pound and so forth. That's something that's negotiated by our franchisor, and that's important. The leaders of our team, Mark Douglas, Nick Boru, they're the ones that do all of that heavy lifting for our franchisees. So they don't have to worry about the pricing. They don't have to
Yep.
worry about negotiating. They don't even have to worry about where the buyers are going to come from.
Yeah, they don't really care. They
Well,
just it leaves and then they get paid the 20 something grand, whatever it is for the trailer, and then it's
that's
off
it.
filling the next one up, right?
That's it.
Um, so then let's talk about so in terms of scalability, you mentioned they start with this initial package. What does it cost for an initial, range of 20 bins, franchise fee, all that stuff?
So the initial cost, and this is kind of one of our leading uh, elements of attraction too, is that it's relatively low barrier to entry. They've got two main components of the initial investment. It's about $140,000 in total for the on the low end side, and that's the entry point with
Yep.
20 bins. The bins are about $3,000 each. That plus freight's about 65,000. The initial franchise fee is $49,500. So those two
Yep.
components really make up the bulk of the investment. The delta between those two elements, which is about $118,000 and 140,000, really is going to be working capital just to
Yep.
get them from day one to week 8, and that's about that window of time that we gave you to as a means of
Yeah, because
creating
they're
or
starting
generating
this
that
thing
first
up. They
sale.
might have payroll for a driver,
Yep,
but it
that's
takes
it.
6 to 7 weeks to get it, whatever, and then obviously you got to get time to get paid and
Well, they
um,
got labor, they got gas for the truck,
yeah, all the
renting the
stuff. Yeah,
truck,
all
things like that.
insurance, all that.
Just yeah, insurance.
And so then talk about then the scalability of all right. So we start with 20 bins in a 10 to 12 zip codes. How many bins? So say you didn't buy more territories. How many bins could
Right.
you put in 10 to 12 to a single territory?
Yeah. So each territory is designed to hold at least somewhere between 60 and 80 bins.
Okay.
And in a lot of markets, it can be even more than that. If you think of it like a retail establishment, if you place a bin in a certain area, it might eliminate the possibility of placing it in other footprints, other areas. That rarely happens because even if you have a bin on this side of the street, there might be the need to have a bin on the other side of the street, especially when they're highways that have barriers in the middle, they're jug handles and things like that. We have that in places like New Jersey and Illinois and places where markets are delineated a little bit differently. So each market's going to hold about 60 to 80 bins
Okay. Awesome. And I and
comfortably.
I
Yeah,
And I think like the way I think about this, I think people too is really this is like I said, it was an asset based business. So you're buying the spin for $3,000 and placing it, and at the end of the day, it's like, what's the return on that investment, right? On that asset that you're
yeah,
buying, and what can
yeah.
it generate? and you know, and if it's a percentage return, and once you buy it once, and then it produces, you know, income every year for you. And like you mentioned, if it's not in a good spot, you know, you just move it versus like a real estate asset or something else you're buying. It's not really the case. This is more, you know, it feels to me more of like this is like a numbers driven, you know, business, and then it becomes a logistics game, right? Of, you know, optimizing your route, reducing your labor cost on
Right.
it. But then it sounds like it can be scalable. So talk to me about some of your biggest franchisees in terms of, you know, how many bins do they have? Like how big of a team? Like if someone really wanted to buy a whole market and go big on this thing, like what has
Yeah.
somebody done up to this point? And then I guess what do you see as like possible?
So I emphasize the importance of establishing a really strong foundation. The reason why is it is systematic, it is formulaic, it is very. Um, I guess you can project out. The more bins you have, the more revenue you have, the more profitability you have, and so forth. So we start at 20, and then brands or franchisees typically grow in increments of 10 bins. We have franchisees with 30, 40, 50 bins. We have franchisees with 220 bins. So it's, there are systems that operate, from uh, a scalability standpoint. It's not proportionate necessarily to the number of bins, in the sense that the franchisee with 220 bins, they don't have 8 to 10 employees. I
Mm.
think they have like 4 or 5, to be honest. And
Yeah,
so,
because then they just run every day instead of once a week or whatever, right? It's the same
exactly.
employee, it's just, you know,
It's the number of
more
shifts.
work.
Yeah, it's
Yep,
the number of shifts and the number of sales. So, you rarely will, and I don't think they have more than two of those tractor trailer beds. They may have one more than that, but they don't have 10 tractor trailer beds to accommodate that number of franchise of bins, because the
yep,
sale is continuing to happen. Instead of once every 6 to 7 weeks, now it's once or twice a week, or once every two
mm,
2 weeks, or once every 3 weeks. It sort of it That's how the scalability of our model works. So a franchisee, entering with a single market area, they have the ability to grow, 60 to 80 bins. That's a sale, pretty frequently on the side that I was just alluding to. And that's really it. They're not buying. They buy a truck eventually, after once they hit about 2 or 3 shifts per week. Now they're buying or leasing that truck rather than
yep,
renting it, because they've got, it becomes a little bit more cost
yep,
prohibitive to do it that
yep,
way. And then when they have more bins, they have more people, they have more. They may have 2 trucks going out in a day, or
yep.
more. And so that's the
It's
that's sort
awesome.
of the scalability. Yeah, yeah,
Cool. And so, and I know you guys provide a ton of details in your financial disclosure document regarding to, or the financials in your franchise disclosure document, item
yeah,
19. So
yeah,
anybody interested in diving into the financials, they have sales, they've got average profit per bin, average profit per franchisee, you know,
yeah,
and all that. Obviously you go through validating by talking to existing franchisees to confirm, you know, what are they experiencing in real life,
yeah.
as part of your due diligence, which is critical. And
That's it,
so,
and that's a really key thing I want to kind of emphasize too, Brian. I mean, a lot of us, especially us who we are in the development and growing brands, I don't think we emphasize the person that we're working with, we're talking to on the other end of the phone, or
yep,
in this case, the image, the Zoom, whatever. We do look for people that have uh, a number of different qualities. A couple of those, one of those in particular, is grit. We know in business we're going to be confronted with a point where, okay, that bin needs to be moved. It's raining outside, or it's, I'm doing, a kid needs to go to soccer practice, or whatever. And
yep,
a lot of times that franchisee is not the one that has to move that bin.
yeah, that's right. Yep,
It's their employee, their team member, what have you. We have a wide variety of franchisees. We have a common friend, a furniture manufacturer, family business. We have engineers. We have, people who, and this is an important part too. Is that most of the franchisees that are in our system, and this is a testament to the semi-absentee part of this, they keep their job. They have a job. They have other businesses. One of our top performing franchisees has another franchise business altogether, multi-unit owner, area developer. So there's a lot that goes on in the lives of our franchisees, and there's an element of giving back.
Yep.
There's an element of your character that we listen for too. This is not someone that wants to just get in the business and just make a quick buck.
Yep.
This is someone that really cares. And if you asked any of our franchisees, and you talked about the validation part of it, if you ask any of our franchisees, that's one of the reasons they're franchisees too, because those franchise candidates talk with other franchisees, and they pick up on that. They pick
Yep.
up on that element of character and commitment. And family's not a requirement, but it is a commonality with our franchisees. So,
Awesome.
um, yeah,
Cool. Well, I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. Definitely a unique, franchise. One of the, I think it's the only one in that space,
yeah,
and a great opportunity, for the right people. And so, if anybody listening wants to learn more, reach out to me and my team. We will connect you with Chris, and we can help you through the due diligence process and everything that it takes to become a franchise. So, awesome, Chris. Well,
thank
it's
you.
great seeing you, and we'll be in touch.
Absolutely. Thanks, Brian. Take
Thanks,
care.
man. Bye.
We'll see you. You too.